What's up, everybody? I'm here with Billy from the WilsonKing Podcast. What up, fam?
What's up, brother?
So let's get right into the meat of it, man. What started you on this quest you're on?
What started me on the quest for music is I've always been a lover of music. Growing up, I grew up with a dad who was always listening to like Metallica, all that 80s, like into 90s, like grunge.
Nice.
So that's what pulled me into music. And I remember being younger, finding 50 Cent and Nelly and getting the edited versions of their albums from Walmart.
Okay.
That kind of like opened up my eyes to another genre. And then like I always grew up around grandparents who were listening to Dion and the Belmonts, the Beach Boys, the Beatles. I've also always had that as my music taste as well. Like my music taste has been all over the place my whole life. And then what started me on my journey now is I started realizing that a lot of these local bands and artists and musicians, they don't get the publicity that they should. We have so many great artists in this area that aren't really getting into magazines or really getting featured on podcasts or whatever. Well, I've got a platform. I love all these guys. Why don't I be that like medium to like help them get out there a little bit?
So that's what got you into podcasting?
No, what got me into podcasting is a completely different story. It was during COVID, whenever everyone was bitching and complaining, and I remember Corey King, aka DJ Curfew,
Shout out Curfew,
made a post, and I went off on this kid. It wasn't Corey, it was someone else. Like, we were going back and forth about, like, COVID and how it's bad, how, like, it's no better than the flu. Like, you're just going back and forth, and Corey hits me up and says, yo, let's start a podcast, have these conversations in person, instead of having these conversations over Facebook where you can't read in, like, where you read into more of it than what it really is. You can hear people's tone if they're getting angry with you. Depending on how you word stuff on Facebook, you don't get the context of it. You don't get the tone. You don't get, like, the inflection of the voice. So Corey and I was like, yo, let's start this. And then it just evolved into what it is now.
you do a lot of networking with like local bands. Tell me a little bit about that. Like, how did you weave yourself in?
Shouts out to Brandon Wright.
Shout out, Brandon.
Corey and I decided to go to one of the first comedy nights that Wright Live did after COVID with H. Jackson.
Okay.
Fell in love with all the comedians, started networking with them, started paying attention more and more to having local bands that I love playing. And I'm like, I'm going to go to these and like start networking with these bands. Whenever I started thinking like, these local bands don't, outside of them sharing their own stuff on Facebook or family and friends sharing it, they don't really have any other platforms or streams of getting their stuff out there. Why don't I start bringing these bands on as well as like we were already doing the DJs. And so I was like, why don't we extend the olive branch to another genre of music?
How did you hook up with Right Live?
I've known Brandon since 2017. I remember the first time I met him. I've always known him as Brandon Wright, defending king. I remember the first time I went to go talk to him, I swear to God, you could have heard my knees knocking together. Then I didn't see him for a while because I got out of the scene. And then I started getting back into it. I remember seeing Brandon, and I'm like, I always see your stuff. Hey, if you ever need any help like with promoting anything, you want anything shared, just let me know. I'll do a pro bono. I really don't care. And then it turned into now Right Live is the biggest sponsor we got.
Yeah, Brandon's kind of got the local band scene on lock.
You ain't kidding.
I mean, he is really finessing the rock scene around here.
Oh, dude, the show they did last night was insane. You had, like, Operation Botch playing last night. Saint Diablo came up last night. Stellar Circuits out of North Carolina was up in the area last night as well, all for the pre-party for Rock the Panhandle.
Is Right Live throwing the Rock the Panhandle?
So it's a joint effort with, I want to say it's Eternal Productions. I might be fucking that up.
What's your top 5 rappers?
My top 5 rappers, holy shit. Lil Wayne's got to be in there. Tupac.
Of course.
Biggie. Eminem. I got to think of a 5th one. Like,
Bro, everybody has so much trouble with the 5th one. It's like everyone nails their top 4.
Like, Tom McDonald's another huge one I love, but I wouldn't put him in my top 5 either.
He makes very polarizing music.
Yes.
I give him that. Like, his marketing is phenomenal. I haven't deep dived his music much. Like, I'm not gonna lie, I got kind of turned off on the TikTok, like the White Boy song.
Yeah.
It kind of turned me off from Tom McDonald because I was like, damn, you really out here making like an anthem like that right now? That's not the call, bro.
Yeah. Well, it's what pulled me in was like whenever everything was starting to go to shit, right? And he started making music that was like for everybody. It talked about the political side of things, but it was truly for everyone. He wasn't one-sided. He wasn't this way or that way. He was like, why can't we do this or why can't we do that? But then I started deep diving into his music, and I found his song Church, which was talking about his struggle with alcoholism. and Drugs. I found his like a few of his other songs. Like I can hear the song melody in my head, but I can't think of the name of it. Pretty much like a note to his mom saying, "Hey, like I fucked up." And believe it or not, with Tom MacDonald, before he ever started rapping, he was a professional wrestler up in Canada, and I only know that because of Mac Lethal. Because him and Mac Lethal were beefing. Like
I saw that. That's where I kind of got put onto him because Mac Lethal is an old Scribble Jam MC from freestyle battles in the era I used to battle in. Like it first of all is weird to just see me have Mac Lethal pop back up in life, and second of all, I was like, damn, he beefing with Tom MacDonald, and I mean, Mac Lethal's nice. I've seen him destroy people on a battle stage.
What's wild is, right, and this isn't even me just because I love Tom MacDonald. If you listen to Mac Lethal's like diss towards Tom MacDonald, it's good. He destroys him. But then Tom MacDonald comes back in part 1 and part 2 and rips Mac Lethal to shreds.
See, that's how I would expect it to go. I would expect Mac to put up a competition, but honestly, Tom's so much more active and his pen's active every day. Like, I would hope he would win that battle.
Yeah, like the only reason I found out about Tom MacDonald used to doing professional wrestling is because Mac Lethal put a line in there about him being in tights and stuff, right? And like the video shows Tom MacDonald performing, and Tom MacDonald's like, "Yeah, you're right, I was a wrestler," but and then like just like went off and like played off of the diss that Mac Lethal threw out.
That's how you do it.
And dude, it was probably in my top 5 for like diss battles.
So okay, I know you're more of a like rock. What's your top 5 bands?
Slipknot's always number 1.
Okay.
That's the band that got me into like the new age of metal. A Day to Remember, Miss May I, The Story So Far. So I'm a huge metal and pop punk fan.
Okay.
The Story So Far is more pop punk, and the other 3 bands are like metalcore and new metal.
When you say pop punk, are you like Blink 182 or like rancid pop punk?
Like Blink 182
okay.
Pop punk. And my number 5
here it goes again.
Is going to be Dion and the Belmonts. Whenever I first got with my fiance, there was more times than none you were listening. I was listening to the old 60s, like rockabilly, rock and roll, than I was listening to anything else. That or like the early 70s, like CCR and...
I'm not going to front. CCR is one of my favorite bands that I listen to on repeat while I'm in my car by myself. I know no one would expect that, but it's a hard fact.
The one thing I love about music, and just looking at music history, right? All of our music stems from 1 or 2 genres. You had your jazz back in the day, and you had your country art, but your country emerged from jazz. But like all of the genres that we have today stem from like jazz in the early 20s.
Yeah.
To 1910s. Like that early jazz is where all music stems from. And
so, where do you see the podcast going? Like, what do you got coming up in the future that, you know, that, like, what are some advancements? Because I know every day you're a person who thinks of, like, I'm here, I want to get to here. I'm here, I want to get to here. Let us get a little bit of the secret sauce stuff.
So, future plans is switching up camera angles. Because, like, the camera angles work for what we're doing right now. But I want to get more straightforward camera angles. So, we're looking at getting wall mounts for the camera so that you can just mount to the wall out of the way. And you can essentially do pretty much whatever you want. Plan on adding a camera, 1 or 2 more cameras, just for full table views, and instead of like just going back and forth between just 2 different cameras, having that camera angle where if we're just constantly rebuttaling back and forth, I can just switch to that 1 camera and you get the whole view of the whole table.
That's awesome.
And then other than that, it's just continuing with acoustic treatment, you know, putting some rugs in there because the whole studio is just hardwood and wood and drywall, and so putting some carpet in there so that it dies down a little bit of that reverb from the ground, maybe put in some bass catchers in the corners, just little tinkering stuff to make it a better fit. I'm even looking at getting clouds, like making my own clouds to put on the ceiling to help fill in some of that ceiling space too.
Who are guests you're about to have that you might want to plug early?
Like tomorrow, I'm getting ready to record with my boy John. He's out in Nebraska, but he has had a good bit of in and out of the system stuff from a child to adulthood. So I'm having him come on. We're going to talk about being in the system. I've never been in it, so I've never known anything about it. But
it's a terrible place.
Oh, hell yeah, it is. From what I've heard from people that I know that's been in it,
and it's completely broken.
Mm-hmm. And I'm having him come on to talk about it because, I mean, he's only removed from it not even 10 years, so it's still pretty fresh in his mind. He's also taught me a lot about that, right? Because there's a lot of things that, like, you don't say to someone who has been in the system because it's a fight on site because you don't say that in there. So there's a lot of stuff I've learned from him that he doesn't know that I've learned from him, but just the way he acts, like, you can tell he's starting to convert back to, being in civilization. You can still tell there's a slight piece of him that's still institutionalized.
I'll tell you what, when I do these interviews, the first question I normally ask people is, where are you from? But see, inside, that means something whole different.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, I knew that then, but, like, it's an interview question.
Mm-hmm.
But every time I ask it, you'll notice I lean back a little bit because I'm expecting a bad response. Yeah. Everybody knows they're on an interview. It's me. It's in my brain.
And other episodes we got coming up is I just recorded today with Mike Palladino. We did a lot of talk about philosophy, weightlifting, and how philosophy and religion kind of go hand in hand. And I just dropped one with Danielle Bennett where we were talking about the shooting at Robb Elementary in Uvalde, and we were talking about gun reform, not gun control, gun reform. Anyone watching this, we just dropped the most funniest fucking episode we ever did, the 13 Sins episode, 100th episode. I have literally watched it 5 times and do not laugh any less every time. Dude, we even did this whole segment where everyone got a matchup, 2 minutes in the ring, either this person who's in the local music scene or a rabbit animal. Chris, I don't even know how to pronounce the last name, he's from Brass Knuckle Union, he got brought into the mix. Mike Reed got brought into the mix. Jonathan Spaulding got brought into the mix. Mike McCumbie got brought into the mix. Colleen got brought into literally probably 8 to 10 people got brought into the mix.
That's awesome.
Because at one point it went from just one person or one animal to, okay, now we're doing Royal Rumble style. You got 30 minutes with 3 people.
Anything you want to plug before we get out of here? Tell the people how to find you. Tell the people where you at, who you are.
Check us out on our website at www.thewilsonkingpodcast.com. That's where you'll find all of our videos if you don't feel like scrolling through YouTube, but it's also where you'll find every single one of our audio episodes as well. You can also find all those on typical streaming platforms, as in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Deezer, Stitcher, so on and so forth. You can also find us on all socials at The Wilson King Podcast, and Twitter is The Wilson King Pod. But all other socials are The Wilson King Podcast.
I am so fucking jealous of how smoothly this motherfucker does his plugs. And everybody else, check us out at PaleGarbageRappers.com. Follow us at Pale Garbage Rappers on all socials. Lord Dynasty has the Moment or a Lifetime single bumping right now. F.A. Ancho has the Trappin' and Balenciaga's single out pumping everywhere now. Scroll down, watch the videos, check him out on Wilson King Podcast. Go to Rock the Panhandle, support these shows, support local music. I'll see y'all later. Later, man.
Ripping microphones, but that's stating the obvious. Ripping microphones, ripping microphones, ripping microphones, but that's stating the obvious. Kicking shit to make MCs back down. Ripping, 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 kicking shit to make MCs back down.